Just weeks before his sudden passing, Ray Liotta opened up in what would become one of his final interviews, and what he revealed now carries an unexpected weight. Sitting comfortably, reflecting on his return to the gritty universe of the Many Saints of Newark, he spoke about plans he still had, things he meant to finish. There was no sadness in his voice, no hint of goodbye, just a veteran actor talking about the future. And that's exactly what makes watching it now feel so haunting. The orphan who became dangerous. Ray Liotta's story begins in 1954 in New Jersey, but from day one, his life carried a quiet twist. He was given up shortly after birth and spent his first 6 months in an orphanage before Alfred and Mary Liotta adopted him and brought him home. They were a working-class couple of Italian and Scottish descent who raised him as their own in Union, New Jersey. He grew up knowing he was adopted. It was never hidden. In fact, as a kid, he once did a show-and-tell presentation about it at school. But just because he knew didn't mean it sat easy with him. There was anger there, confusion too. As he got older, he admitted he struggled with the idea of how a parent could walk away from their child. That feeling stayed with him for years. He wasn't alone in the household, though. His sister Linda was adopted as well, and the two of them grew up side by side in a Roman Catholic home that was more traditional than strict. They went through communion and confirmation, but this wasn't a kneel by the bed every night kind of family. Still, those early lessons stuck. Later in life, when things got heavy or uncertain, he would find himself quietly going back to the familiar prayers he learned as a kid. By the time he graduated from Union High School in 1973, a school that would later put him in its Hall of Fame, he still didn't have some grand master plan. He headed down to the University of Miami, not because he had some burning artistic vision, but because he needed to go somewhere. At first, he didn't even see himself as the acting type. He felt lost, directionless. He even walked out of his SATs, convinced academics just weren't for him. In his mind, construction work or some kind of manual labor seemed like the more realistic future. Then came the moment that quietly changed everything. He was standing in the registration line at Miami, looking over course requirements like math and history, already mentally checked out. He didn't even want to be there, and he definitely didn't want to be solving equations. Then he spotted a friend standing in the drama department line. On impulse, he joined her. It felt random, almost like a joke. He signed up for what he thought would be some goofy theater classes just to get by. But something clicked. It wasn't instant stardom. It wasn't some dramatic movie montage. He actually spent his first year doing musicals, far from the intense, sharp-edged characters he'd later become known for. Still, the spark was there. Acting gave him direction. It gave him a lane. By 1978, he walked away with a Bachelor of Fine Arts, and for the first time, the path in front of him didn't feel so blurry. After college, he made the classic move. New York City, no guarantees, just ambition and hustle. To pay the bills, he worked as a bartender for the Schubert organization, pouring drinks while chasing auditions. But things moved faster than most newcomers could hope for. Within 6 months, he landed an agent. His real break came when he was cast as Joey Perini on the soap opera Another World. From 1978 to 1981, he played Joey, and the audience loved him. Back then, he wasn't the intense, unpredictable screen presence people would later associate with his name. He was the sweet, dependable, young hero. The guy who took care of his mother. The guy who didn't throw punches. But because it was daytime television, his character's love life was pure chaos. Over 3 years, Joey found himself wrapped up in sweeping romances with several of the show's leading women. There was Eileen Simpson, played by Vicki Dawson. There was Kit Holloway, played by Bradley Bliss. And there was Blaine Ewing, played by Laura Malone. Each storyline leaned fully into classic soap opera drama. One arc in particular felt like it was written at full emotional volume. Joey proposed to his girlfriend on a hill, gave her a St. Christopher medal in the hospital, and then she died. Heartbroken, he returned to that same hill, slipped, fell, and somehow ended up back in the hospital himself. While recovering, he fell for his nurse, who turned out to be the richest woman in America. And in the most Joey way possible, the relationship ended in an annulment because she hadn't told him about her massive fortune. Years later, when he looked back at those early scenes, he could barely believe it. The wide-eyed hero on screen felt like a completely different person from the intense figures he would later portray in film. But that soap opera run mattered. It gave him experience. It gave him exposure. It gave him confidence. What started as a random decision in a college registration line had quietly turned into the foundation of a legendary career, the call that changed everything. After putting in steady work for a few years on the soap opera Another World, Ray Liotta started feeling that pull. Television had given him experience, confidence, and a little recognition, but it wasn't enough. In 1981, he packed up and headed to Los Angeles with one clear goal: break into movies. Hollywood, though, doesn't exactly roll out a red carpet for newcomers. The industry runs on relationships as much as talent. A familiar last name can open doors before you even knock. Ray didn't have that. What he had was grit and a growing hunger to prove himself. The early years in LA were lean. He picked up small parts where he could, including a role in a short-lived TV adaptation of Casablanca and a brief appearance on St. Elsewhere. Nothing flashy, nothing career-changing, just enough to stay in the game. To sharpen his skills, he enrolled in acting classes with Harry Mastro George, a respected coach whose student list would eventually include names like Bryan Cranston and Jimon Hounsou. Back then, though, everyone in that room was just grinding. Among his classmates were future stars like Kevin Costner and Stephen Bauer, along with Bauer's wife at the time, Melanie Griffith. Nobody knew how big those names would become. They were all just chasing the same dream. By 1986, Griffith had landed a lead role in Something Wild, a road comedy directed by Jonathan Demme. Meanwhile, Liotta was 30 years old and starting to feel the clock ticking. He hadn't made a real dent in film yet. When he first heard about the role through classmates, he assumed his agent would line up an audition. That never happened. His agent couldn't even get him in the room. At that point, his parents, who were involved in politics, gave him some straightforward advice. Start making calls. Networking wasn't glamorous, but it was real. It took some swallowing of pride, but he reached out to Melanie Griffith. He didn't want favors. He wanted to earn it. Still, sometimes you just need someone to open the door. Griffith believed in him. She contacted Demme and told him he needed to meet Ray. That one call changed everything. Liotta got a meeting, then a call back to read opposite Jeff Daniels. On audition day, the nerves were heavy. He tried to burn them off with push-ups, pacing, anything to get into the zone. When he finally stepped into the room, though, something switched. He unleashed in the scene, bringing an intensity that felt raw and unpredictable. He walked out thinking he had done everything he could. Then came the waiting. By Monday, the confidence started to fade. By Tuesday, doubt crept in. By Wednesday, he was convinced it was over. He was 30, still without a real movie credit to his name, and the fear of missing his window was loud. Then Thursday came. The phone rang. The role was his. The release of that tension hit hard. It wasn't just relief, it was validation. When Something Wild hit theaters, Liotta didn't just appear on screen. He exploded onto it. His performance carried a live-wire energy that critics couldn't ignore. The role earned him a Golden Globe nomination and suddenly placed him on Hollywood's radar in a way that years of small parts never had. But success comes with its own traps. After that breakout performance, scripts started flooding in. Most of them cast him as some variation of a villain or dangerous outsider. He saw the pattern forming. He understood how quickly an actor could get boxed in. So instead of striking while the iron was hot, he waited. He turned things down. He took a full year before choosing his next project. To stretch beyond the tough guy image, he selected softer, more emotional roles. First came Dominic and Eugene, a family drama. Then came Field of Dreams, where he played the ghost of shoeless Joe Jackson opposite Kevin Costner. It was a quiet, almost mythical performance, far removed from the volatile edge he had shown in Something Wild. Years later, though, Liotta reflected on that decision with mixed feelings. In trying to avoid being typecast, he may have sidestepped momentum. He eventually admitted that he might have benefited from leaning into those darker roles when the industry was ready to hand them to him. At the time, though, he was thinking long game. He didn't want to be just one thing. He wanted range. He wanted control. And even if the strategy wasn't perfect, it showed something important about him early on. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing longevity, the battle before the breakthrough. In 1990, Ray Liotta stepped into the role that would define his career, real-life mobster Henry Hill in Goodfellas. Directed by Martin Scorsese, the film would go on to become a cultural landmark, critically acclaimed, an Oscar winner, and a box office success. But Liotta's road to that part was anything but smooth. It began with a meeting. His agent arranged for him to sit down with Scorsese, who had taken notice of his performance in Something Wild. At the time, every serious actor in Hollywood wanted the role of Henry Hill. Liotta walked in nervous, fully aware of the competition. But there was no traditional audition, no cold reading, just a conversation. They sat across from each other and talked. Still, nothing was guaranteed. The story took a dramatic turn at the Venice Film Festival. Liotta was there promoting Dominic and Eugene, while Scorsese was presenting The Last Temptation of Christ, a project surrounded by controversy and protests at the time. Security around Scorsese was intense. Death threats had made that necessary. Liotta spotted him in the lobby of the Excelsior Hotel and saw an opportunity. He wanted to reconnect, to remind Scorsese he was still serious about the role. So he made his move, calling out and heading in his direction. Before he could get close, security stepped in and physically blocked him. It could have turned awkward. It could have turned ugly. But Liotta didn't push back. He didn't argue. He didn't demand special treatment. He simply stopped, stayed calm, and let the moment pass. From across the room, the two men locked eyes. A small nod, a silent understanding. "We'll talk later." Scorsese watched that interaction carefully. Later, he would explain that casting Henry Hill required a rare balance. The actor needed to feel authentic, like he truly belonged in that world. He had to carry innocence and curiosity in the early scenes, authority as the story darkened, and enough natural charm to offset the violence and moral decay unfolding on screen. Most importantly, he had to carry the entire film. Scorsese had admired Liotta's earlier work, but he still had concerns. Could he hold the weight of the story from beginning to end? That quiet moment in the hotel lobby answered something for him. He saw composure. He saw control. He saw quiet authority. And deep down, he knew. But even after the director made up his mind, the battle wasn't over. At Warner Brothers, there was resistance. Producer Irwin Winkler wasn't convinced. From a studio perspective, Liotta didn't have the star power they wanted to anchor a major crime film. He wasn't considered an A-lister. Executives floated bigger names. At one point, Tom Cruise was discussed for the role of Henry Hill. For Karen Hill, Madonna was reportedly considered. It was a very different vision from the gritty realism Scorsese had in mind. Liotta knew he wasn't the studio's first choice. Instead of waiting quietly, he fought for it. In one pivotal moment, he ran into Winkler outside a restaurant in Los Angeles. He didn't posture. He didn't pretend. He made his case directly, explaining why he understood Henry Hill and why he could carry the film. The pitch was strong enough that Winkler called Scorsese the next day and admitted he finally saw what the director saw. There was another huge factor that completely shifted the balance: Robert De Niro. Once De Niro signed on, and Joe Pesci came with him, the whole energy around the project changed. Now this wasn't just another crime film, it had serious star power. And when you add the reunion of Scorsese and De Niro, who had already made magic together on Raging Bull, the studio suddenly felt a lot more confident. With that kind of heavyweight lineup in place, taking a chance on Liotta didn't feel nearly as risky. It felt smart. And in the end, that gamble paid off. But not long after the success, tragedy followed. You see, production on Goodfellas was already moving at full speed when Ray Liotta received the kind of phone call that makes the world go quiet. In the middle of filming, he learned that his mother was dying. For a moment, everything else faded. Director Martin Scorsese remembered being told the news and heading straight to Liotta's trailer. Inside, Ray was shattered. He kept talking about how she had adopted him, how she raised him, how kind she had always been. The pain wasn't complicated. It was raw and personal. Scorsese immediately told him to go, be with her, leave the set. Nothing about the movie mattered more than that. But Liotta surprised him. Through the tears, he insisted on staying to finish the day's work. Scorsese asked again to be sure. Ray didn't change his mind. They walked out of the trailer together and back onto the set. The scene scheduled for that day was the celebration after the crew's first big score, one of the film's high-energy moments. Before cameras rolled, Scorsese gathered everyone, including his own father, and told them what Ray was going through. Then they filmed. What ended up on screen looks like pure euphoria, laughter, swagger, the rush of criminal success. But underneath it was something heavier. The cast and crew weren't just acting. They were rallying around their friend. The joy in that scene carried a strange intensity because it was layered over grief. Scorsese would later say he had never experienced anything like that before and never had again. That emotional weight fit the film's tone. Unlike the grand, almost operatic crime saga of The Godfather, Goodfellas focused on working-class gangsters. Henry Hill, Jimmy Conway, and Tommy DeVito weren't kings of the underworld. They were soldiers, associates tied to the Lucchese family, answering up the chain to men like Paulie Cicero. Their world was flashy on the surface, but small and dangerous underneath. To make it feel real, Scorsese didn't just rely on trained actors. The production held open casting sessions at Rao's, the legendary Italian restaurant known for its old-school atmosphere and colorful regulars. The idea was simple: bring in neighborhood faces who looked like they actually belonged in that life. Casting director Ellen Lewis later described it as a gamble. Some of the men had the perfect presence for the screen. Others had real-life histories that were a little too close to the story being told. One person who could not appear on camera was the real Henry Hill himself. By the time filming began, Hill and his wife Karen were deep inside the witness protection program after he testified against his former associates. Liotta prepared for the role without ever meeting him, listening to hours of taped interviews provided by author Nicholas Pileggi. Only after the film was completed did Liotta finally come face-to-face with the real Henry Hill. The first thing Hill said wasn't about the performance or the accuracy. He simply thanked Liotta for not making him look like a complete lowlife. Considering everything the film portrayed, the comment caught Ray off guard. Not every intense moment on set was emotional. Some were physical. In one scene, Liotta's character roughs up Maury, the loud, wig-selling hanger-on played by Chuck Lowe. Lowe wasn't a seasoned actor. He had been Robert De Niro's former real estate consultant before landing the role. During the take, things got a little too real. Lowe reacted to Liotta's forward momentum by throwing him harder than expected. Ray slammed into a wall and split his lip open. Production had to pause so he could get stitches before returning to finish the scene. If viewers look closely, they can spot moments afterward where his lip is visibly swollen. It became one of those hidden details that only makes the film feel more authentic. When Goodfellas was released, it became an instant landmark. The film earned 6 Academy Award nominations, with Joe Pesci taking home the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Liotta's performance was widely praised for its intensity and complexity. Yet, in the years that followed, his career didn't follow the smooth, upward trajectory many expected. There were strong roles, but also uneven choices and stretches of bad timing. He never quite transformed into the consistent A-list leading man that Goodfellas seemed to promise, trapped by one iconic role. If you really step back and look at Ray Liotta's career, it's kind of wild how often he actually played the good guy. People forget that part. He was the soft-spoken, almost mystical, shoeless Joe Jackson in Field of Dreams. He was the smooth but ultimately duped romantic lead in Heartbreakers. Before any of that, he sharpened his craft playing Joey Perini on the soap opera Another World for 3 years. But here's the twist in the story. None of that is what most people remember. Liotta understood that better than anyone. He once admitted that no matter how many decent, upright characters he played, people would always lock in on the villains. When audiences think about legends like Al Pacino or Robert De Niro, they don't immediately picture their softer roles. They think about Raging Bull and The Godfather, the intense stuff, the dangerous stuff. And with Liotta, it was the same story. To most of the world, he will always be Henry Hill from Goodfellas, the wide-eyed kid who got pulled into the mob life and never really found his way back out. Some actors might fight that kind of typecasting. Liotta didn't. He made peace with it. He described Goodfellas as a movie that never lets up, and he seemed genuinely amazed at how it kept finding new audiences. Years after its release, kids who weren't even born when it hit theaters were walking up to him, calling him the Goodfellas guy, and he liked that. There was no bitterness there, just a kind of disbelief at the staying power. Still, behind that calm acceptance was a man who knew he could be difficult, especially if the energy on set felt off. When he was promoting The Place Beyond the Pines, he admitted he wasn't always the easiest person to work with. A lot of it came down to directors. If he sensed that the person in charge didn't really know what they were doing, it got under his skin fast. And by that point, he had worked with heavy hitters. He knew what strong direction looked like. So when Derek Cianfrance, still early in his career, stepped into the mix, Liotta was open to it, but cautious. Experience had made him impatient with uncertainty. Volatile, that mood could bleed into real volatile. That mood could bleed into real life. He admitted that when he was portraying a villain, he wasn't exactly sunshine between takes. He even avoided co-stars who irritated him, just to stay locked in. Now, think about how many times he played the heavy, the mobster, the cop with a temper, the wild card. It's not hard to imagine how a reputation might quietly build around that intensity. And in Hollywood, reputation travels fast. Then there are the what-ifs. It's almost impossible now to picture anyone but Michael Keaton under the cowl in Batman. That brooding, slightly off-center energy fit perfectly with Tim Burton's Gothic world. But Keaton wasn't the only name in the conversation. After seeing Liotta break out in Something Wild, Burton saw something edgy and real in him. Liotta, though, didn't see it. At the time, the idea of Batman didn't register as something serious. Ironically, Burton had just directed one of Liotta's favorite films, Beetlejuice, but the superhero genre hadn't yet become the unstoppable machine it is today. So he passed. Looking back, he realized how big that moment was. With Burton directing and Jack Nicholson stepping in as the Joker, that film exploded. It reshaped the blockbuster landscape. And somewhere out there is an alternate universe where Liotta's Batman is squaring off against Nicholson's Joker, and maybe even trading that same electric energy he once had with Joe Pesci. But Batman wasn't the only rumor that followed him. For years, people swore he was supposed to play Tony Soprano in The Sopranos. That never actually happened. He was never offered the lead. What did happen was a conversation with creator David Chase during the show's run. The role on the table was Ralph Cifaretto, a chaotic, explosive presence who would later be played by Joe Pantoliano. At the time, Liotta was filming Hannibal in Virginia. Chase even traveled to meet him. But Liotta hesitated. He didn't want to dive back into another mafia role. He had already been stamped by Goodfellas. Taking on Ralphie might have deepened that branding even more. So he passed. Pantoliano went on to make Ralphie one of the most hated and unforgettable characters in the series. And the DiMeo family story rolled on without Henry Hill in the mix. Years later, Liotta would finally step into that universe through the Many Saints of Newark, the prequel to The Sopranos. Not as a retread of Henry Hill, not as Tony, but as something new. By then, it felt less like chasing an opportunity and more like closing a circle. And then there's Martin Scorsese. Scorsese is famous for keeping his circle tight. Leonardo DiCaprio, De Niro, the collaborators who keep coming back. But after Goodfellas, Liotta never became one of those regulars. He wasn't in The Irishman. He missed out on The Departed because of scheduling. When asked about it, he didn't sound resentful. He simply said the parts didn't fit. When he looked at something like The Wolf of Wall Street, he genuinely couldn't picture where he would slot in. Of course, fans love drama. Some speculated that maybe his intensity rubbed someone the wrong way back in the Goodfellas days, but that feels thin. Scorsese has navigated strong personalities his entire career. Sometimes careers just drift in different directions. Then came the moment that stirred real controversy. When asked which director he would drop everything to work with, Liotta named Woody Allen. At a time when Allen was under intense scrutiny during the height of the #MeToo movement, that answer landed hard. The backlash was swift. For an actor already fighting to maintain top-tier leading roles, publicly backing such a polarizing figure didn't exactly smooth his path. And then there was the box office gamble. After the faith-based indie The Identical struggled badly, opening opposite Guardians of the Galaxy, Liotta spoke candidly about what went wrong. He questioned the distribution strategy. He wondered if the faith-based label scared audiences off. He felt critics had been unusually harsh, but the reality was tough. A modest religious drama going head-to-head with a Marvel spectacle featuring cosmic battles and a wisecracking raccoon was always going to be an uphill fight. That wasn't about reputation. That was about scale. Through it all, Ray Liotta's career feels like a series of sliding doors. The Batman that never happened, the mob boss he didn't play, the Scorsese reunion that never came. And yet, despite all the what-ifs, one thing stayed solid. No matter how many nice guys he portrayed, no matter how many projects he passed on, the image that stuck was Henry Hill walking into that nightclub through the back door in Goodfellas. Ray Liotta's haunting final interview before his death. Believe it or not, in one of his final interviews, Ray Liotta revealed something surprisingly personal. He had every intention of finishing The Sopranos one day. Now that hits a little different when you remember he was already part of that universe. He starred in the prequel film, The Many Saints of Newark, stepping into the gritty world that The Sopranos made legendary. But even then, he admitted he had never actually sat down and watched the full series. While talking with Seth Meyers, Liotta confessed that he had only caught a few episodes when the show first aired. Back then, he just wasn't the type to sit at home and binge television. He was out living life, working, moving. The couch wasn't calling his name. Still, he gave the show its respect. Whenever he stumbled across an episode, he could see the brilliance. He recognized the writing, the performances, the atmosphere. He always said he would eventually go back and watch it properly. It just hadn't happened yet. What made it easier was the fact that his role in the Many Saints of Newark was brand new. He wasn't stepping into shoes that someone else had already filled. He didn't have to study another actor's rhythm or match an established voice. Some of the cast in the prequel were playing younger versions of characters fans already knew, but Liotta had the freedom to build his performance from scratch. No blueprint, no pressure to imitate, just instinct. Then, in May 2022, the story took a sudden and heartbreaking turn. The acting world lost one of its true heavyweights when Ray Liotta passed away at 67. According to Deadline, he died peacefully in his sleep while in the Dominican Republic. He was there working, filming a thriller titled Dangerous Waters. Even in his final days, he was doing what he had always done, staying active, staying creative, staying in the game. The producers of Dangerous Waters expressed deep sorrow, calling his death a tremendous loss and extending condolences to his family, including his fiancée, JC, and his daughter, Carson. The shock rippled through Hollywood almost instantly. Tributes poured in from every direction, but one stood out in a powerful way. Martin Scorsese, the director who helped cement Liotta's legacy with Goodfellas, spoke with unmistakable emotion. Scorsese reflected on Liotta's rare qualities as an actor, his fearlessness, his unpredictability, his courage. He remembered how demanding Goodfellas had been, especially the role of Henry Hill. The character carried layers of charm, danger, vulnerability, and chaos, often all in the same scene. And Liotta was front and center for nearly the entire film, navigating a long and intense shoot without ever losing his grip. For Scorsese, the collaboration wasn't just another project. It was something lasting. something he would always be proud of.